I was out there, standing on the endless dunes, when I saw it. A faint, rhythmic ripple beneath the sands. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on me, but then it happened again. The ground trembled, just slightly, but enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I squinted into the horizon, scanning for movement. That's when I realized it wasn't the wind. Something massive was moving beneath the surface. It was a moment of both wonder and dread. The sand seemed alive, shifting unnaturally as though the desert itself were breathing. I froze, unsure whether to run or stand my ground. But the choice was made for me when the tremors grew stronger, shaking the very ground beneath my feet. I turned and sprinted back toward the city, my heart racing as fast as my legs. The sand made it harder to run. It pulled at my boots, dragging me down with every step. But I couldn't stop. The image of what I'd seen, the undulating movement, the power beneath the surface, drove me forward. When I reached the city gates, I was breathless, barely able to speak. "They're coming!" I managed to shout. "The worms are coming!" People stopped in their tracks, turning toward me with wide, fearful eyes. "What worms?" someone called out. "Are you sure?" "I saw them," I insisted, trying to steady my voice. "Massive movements under the sand, closer than ever before. We have to act now. We need to prepare for an attack." The council convened quickly. It was chaos inside the chamber, raised voices, arguments, fear rippling through the air like the tremors I had seen in the desert. "How do you know they're coming here?" one elder demanded. "What if it's just a migration?" "Would you rather take that risk?" I shot back. "If we do nothing and they come, we'll be wiped out. We need to prepare for the worst." Reluctantly, they agreed. The city sprang into action. Alarms sounded and the streets filled with people carrying supplies and weapons. Engineers scrambled to set up sonic devices, crude but effective tools we'd used to deter smaller worms in the past. This time, though, we were dealing with something much larger. The ground shook violently, a low rumble that seemed to come from the core of the planet. And then, it happened. The sand exploded outward as the first worm emerged. A towering, writhing beast, its gaping maw lined with rows of teeth that seemed to stretch endlessly into darkness. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, its size beyond comprehension. And it wasn't alone. More worms erupted from the dunes, their roars echoing across the desert. They were an unstoppable force, tearing through the outer defenses of the city with terrifying ease. We fired harpoons, launched explosives, but nothing seemed to slow them down. The creatures moved with an almost unnatural intelligence, circling the city as though testing our defenses. Amid the chaos, I noticed something. The worms weren't attacking at random. They were drawn to sound. The clang of metal, the shouts of the defenders. It was as if they could feel the vibrations, sensing us through the very ground we stood on. That realization gave me an idea. If they responded to sound, maybe we could control their movements. It was a desperate plan, but we had no other options. I grabbed a sonic emitter and climbed to the top of a ridge overlooking the city. From there I could see everything. The people fighting desperately below, the massive forms of the worms as they closed in. With trembling hands, I adjusted the frequency on the emitter, creating a steady, rhythmic pulse. One of the worms stopped, its enormous head turning toward me. For a moment, I thought it would attack, but instead, it paused, seemingly mesmerized by the sound. "Focus on the emitters," I shouted to the others. "Use them to guide the worms away from the city." One by one, they followed my lead, creating a symphony of vibrations that confused and redirected the creatures. Slowly, we began to push them back. But it wasn't enough to just survive. We needed to understand them, to learn how to coexist with these magnificent yet terrifying creatures. In the following days, we worked tirelessly to study their behavior, mapping their patterns and testing new frequencies. What had started as a battle for survival became a journey of discovery. These worms, These giants of the desert weren't just monsters. They were a part of this planet, just as much as we were. By learning to live alongside them, we weren't just saving ourselves. We were finding our place in this harsh, unforgiving world. As I stood on the ridge one last time, watching the worms disappear into the horizon, I felt a strange sense of peace. We had faced the impossible and survived. And in doing so, we had become something greater. A community united by courage, ingenuity, and a newfound respect for the creatures that shared our home.